Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to another live Q&A for the Wahoo All-In live stream presented by the Sufferfest. Today we have a special guest. Last week we had Amity Rockwell, the week before we had Rowan Dennis, and this week we have Jack Thompson, aka Ultra Cyclist. He is currently in Girona, Spain, where they have just extended, lockdown for, I believe, another 2 weeks. So I think he's looking at, he's currently on his 5th or 6th week in lockdown, looking at, I think 7 or 8, out in front of him right now. So, it's an interesting time for everybody. Some people, are quarantined and completely locked inside their house, and others have a bit more freedom. But I appreciate you deciding to spend your Friday morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are, right here with us. Of course, we have Coach Neal Henderson joining us today to have a live Q&A with Jack. So go ahead and start sending over your questions now. Jack will be taking questions as well as Neal, so you can ask training questions as well as just Jack some personal questions on what motivates him and why he takes on these challenges he does. Neal will get into some of Jack's accomplishments. They are big, to say the least. I'm not sure some of us can even fathom how difficult some of these challenges are. But Neal will get into some of that with Jack and kind of talk about what motivates him and also the things that he's working on in the future and the things that he's looking to accomplish, this year and beyond, as well as his past and some of the things that he's kind of overcome. So I will go ahead and mention real quickly that if you're doing a recovery spin today, you can go ahead and click the link down in the description below for the Sufferfest Open 30. That's just a 30-minute open spin. But also keep in mind that the Sufferfest training app has those open workouts in there that you can do, I think, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes. I mean, just keep going up from there. You have tons of options to do there. It tracks all of your data. And then you can queue up your favorite live stream to watch while you have an easy spin. We recommend this one, of course. Also, if you're not currently a Sufferfest app subscriber, that link is down below too, as well as the code to go ahead and get 44 days and sign up for the all-in training plans, which are geared towards keeping you healthy and happy during this kind of odd time that we're in. So I will not make you guys listen to me much more. I'll go ahead and bring in the stars of the show. Neal, welcome back for another Friday live Q&A.
Thanks, Matt. It is good to be with you.
How's Boulder treating you?
We are, I think we may have gone through our last big snows, but who knows? Right now we've got some pretty decent weather on the horizon, but a little bit of rain here and there. And for those who are in higher elevations, there's still going to be snow in Colorado. So through May at least.
Hey, before we bring on Jack, could you tell some of the viewers here? A lot of the viewers, I'm assuming, have taken part in a 4-week all-in training plan already, and we've kind of come up to that 4-week mark where a lot of people have completed the training plans. Can you make some recommendations on kind of what to do next, or kind of what to navigate for training, given that this is going on maybe longer than a lot of people expected?
Yeah, definitely. So, each person, everyone out there is potentially in a little bit different situation. For those of you who are continuing in a stay-at-home kind of order, lockdown, we have actually refreshed or are refreshing all of our all-in plans. So next week, if you follow one of those 4 weeks plans, if you go back in and select and apply even the same plan, it'll be different. We have substituted and changed some of the workouts. So there's not a lot of progression like normally we would be doing more and more and more kind of in a training load and training plan. It's still in that kind of moderated level because we do find that, it is just better. Most people, are maybe able to train 50, 60% or so of what would be normal if they're locked inside and whatnot, just to stay healthy. And so we have those, and we again have the different versions with the multi-sport where we have some of the swim substitution basically strength plans for upper body without a pool, and then we also have some of the plans that are really about that whole overall wellness, with more yoga, strength training, and a little bit less on the endurance side. But we have kind of that mix of things, and again, new and updated starting next week.
Yeah, and I know we've had a lot of questions from viewers about swimming and multi-sport workouts. So it's great to hear that those are in there. They're updated. So if you're a swimmer and you do not have access to a pool and you're trying to kind of get that fitness and stay kind of on top of it, so that when you hit the water again, you're ready to go. It's a good way to go ahead and check that out. I know since I've been following these plans, I've actually seen some pretty good numbers. It's amazing what a little bit of actual reset and rest and kind of recovery will do for you. So it feels like maybe taking a step back, but in reality, I can attest personally that I'm seeing good results from taking a step back for sure, and kind of lowering some of my intensity. So very happy with the results I'm seeing.
Yep, that kind of goes to the fact, we're trying to look for adaptation, not necessarily more stress. Too many times people focus on the stress and just hope the adaptation comes. So
yeah, well, athletes are doers, right? Like, I mean, we want to constantly be progressing, and sometimes that work looks like overworking sometimes. And so maybe a blessing in disguise here from a training standpoint, is like taking a step back and just, recovering a little bit, and we'll see a lot of good results, and hopefully put those results, those efforts to the test, later this year with some racing or just, personal kind of objectives. So let's go ahead and let's get Jack on here. He's looking very svelte today.
Yeah,
Jack.
Hey, boys.
Well, welcome to the live stream. Welcome back to the live stream, I should say. Your Monday workout. I saw you posted after the workout on Instagram. I think that if nobody follows Jack on Instagram, should definitely check it out. Jack, it's Jack Ultra Cyclist, right?
Yeah, spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, it is worth a follow for sure. I think you said you saw like some FTP increase after that workout.
Like, I'm sure Neal and I'll get into that in more detail. But yeah, as of like training inside, like I've seen some really good results. So I'm happy. I'm similar to you, Matt.
Yeah. Well, it's entertaining for sure, and I know you guys have a lot to discuss, so I'll let you jump in. Once again, guys, if you have questions, feel free to type those over in the comments. I will get to just about everyone I can, and if not, we'll have Jack and Neal tune in after the broadcast to kind of address those questions on YouTube or Facebook specifically. So thanks again for joining, and I'll hand it over to the pros here. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. All right, Jack, it is great to have you, and you definitely brought the style level up. You one-upped me or four-upped me a bit here, so.
I figured, we're not going out and about, so if I've got an opportunity to dress up a bit, I'll put a bit of color on.
Exactly. That's not a bad idea at this time. If you've been at home and like probably potentially wearing like the same t-shirts and whatnot for the past, month or month and a half, spicing it up. It's Friday, right?
That's right. Like celebratory.
Take it up a notch. That's good. That's good. That's a good mental reset.
Yeah, that's right. How are you going?
I'm doing all right here. Yeah, tested a new workout last night, so looking forward. We're going to make a couple tweaks. We don't always make them harder. Sometimes we make them easier after we ride it and say, yeah, that's just too much. We got to pull that one back. So this one was one of those. So we'll be getting that ready. So Jack, let's see. I have one question to start, because there's an interesting thread between the first three guests that I've had over the past 3 weeks that we all share the exact same birthday. So first, do you happen to be born in the month of May?
No.
Okay, so we don't even have to go any further. The past three guests, Rowan, Amity, and myself, we all have the same birthday in May. So I'll let others try to find out when that is. But so we've broken the mold. Okay, so we got someone different, a different birthday in. Good. Getting into the stuff that really matters then. Jack, your handle, Jack Ultra Cyclist. Tell me, like, what would you say are like the top three like major accomplishments that you have actually done in cycling?
Yeah, good question. And three come to mind. Like I've got three that probably come to mind straight off the bat. And it's funny, it's been like a bit of a progression. So in my mind, like each time I do something, I almost have to try and one up myself from the last one. So I guess like the initial thing that really kicked things off from a challenge and like a film perspective was a challenge we did at the Taiwan KOM. So it was 4 ascents and descents of the Taiwan KOM climb, non-stop. In 2018, so that would be certainly up there with one of the best.
So one of those KOMs is what kind of altitude over what distance?
So the climb itself is about 90 odd kilometers, starting at sea level and topping out at 3,400 meters. So
that's
up,
mega.
Up.
Yep. That is amazing. And you did that not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times in a row.
Yeah, 4 times. So I sort of feel like I've done that climb now. I probably won't do it again.
Check that box.
Check it off the
list. All right. That is massive.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it steps up from there.
Yeah. Number 2 would be last year we had a little project which was, we called it the Grand Tours Everesting project. And the concept was I wanted to complete an Everesting in each of the Grand Tour countries, so Italy, France, and Spain. And I wanted to do 3 Everests in those countries in 3 days. So we started off in Stelvio and climbed Stelvio, I think 6.5 times to Everest that. And then we immediately jumped in the car and drove to Col de la Bernay in France and Everested that one. And then back in the car. And the plan was actually to Everest Pico Valletta in Spain. But there was a whole swag of issues with car. We had basically the waste tank fell out of the bottom of the car, and there were a whole swag of these anomalies with any adventure. So we ended up doing Port d'Envalira in Andorra and Everested that one.
Yep.
And managed to knock out all 3, including all the transfers, in I think it was 71 hours. That was hard.
That's absolutely remarkable. So that's number 2 on your list.
Number 2, I would toss up now. Number 3 on the list was and it was a bit of an ad hoc thing. Like there was an opportunity arose last year, end of last year, to attend the first gravel event in Portugal, Girona. And it coincided the dates with World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October. And so I sort of chatting with a mate here in Girona, we sort of came up with a concept that what if I could ride from Girona to Portugal non-stop and arrive on World Mental Health Day, and in doing so try and raise awareness for mental health in completing the ride. And so basically set off and rode non-stop to Portugal, which was 1,200 kilometres and 12,000 metres of elevation. And we managed to arrive actually the day before World Mental Health Day, so we were a bit ahead of schedule. But yeah, in terms of achievements, I'm proud of that one because it sort of resonates with the mental health stuff that I'm quite passionate about. So yeah, that's up there.
That is absolutely fantastic. So within the context of mental health, is that something that really the bike is you came to in that context as a place where you've been able to find yourself and make strides in a positive way?
Absolutely. Like for me, the bike I would almost consider it as my medicine. And growing up, I suffered badly from like an obsessive personality and depression, and still to this day, like suffer from depression and ups and downs. But for me, when I hop on a bike, I can almost remove the negative thoughts and focus my energy on something else. And for me, that enables me just to clear my mind. And as part of the challenges that I complete now, one of the sort of key messages that I try to sort of distill in people is that it's actually okay not to be okay. It's a matter of finding a way to overcome a difficult time. And for me, that's jumping on the bike and just riding until I can't ride anymore. And I love it. Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. And there's a lot of positive takeaway and ways that you can utilize that. Do you have some, I know this year you had some plans that are currently a little bit adapted and adjusted. What does, 2020 look like at this point for you?
Yeah, so it's a little bit up in the air now. I guess the challenges that we had planned this year revolved around events. And with the events now looking like they're not going to proceed, it's left me in a position where I've sort of had to try and plan things that will happen in my own backyard, so to speak, here in Spain. And it's like as much as I was disappointed not to be able to complete the task that I've originally set out to undertake, I think it's been a bit of an eye-opener of opportunity that exists basically right on your doorstep. And coming from Australia, I found like whenever I wanted to go on an adventure and do something, I always sought that adventure overseas. Like it was always that exotic traveling somewhere and doing something foreign. But I sort of realised, although Spain is still very foreign to me, having only just recently moved here, it's a great opportunity to actually do something cool from home. And yeah, we've got some cool plans scheduled basically as soon as the lockdown finishes, some cool projects, and then, yeah, some other bits and pieces later in the year that hopefully we can get overseas for, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like adventure is something that you can create, from your door in different ways. And that's, kind of a cool opportunity to take this and say, okay, what can I do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Looks like we've got a question coming in. We have Samuel with 3 S's after. Just going through the questions, best tips for keeping motivation up, especially when you have a tough workout ahead. So like, how do you manage that, knowing, there's certain days that, you got something, a big task, a big day of training. How do you?
Yeah. I've got a couple of ways to get around it. So a big motivator for me is music. So I've got certain playlists that I've created that like they inspire me and they motivate me. It's like really uplifting music. And maybe something we can do is we'll post those playlists so that you guys can have a listen to them while you're on the bike. So there's the music's one thing. I'll leave the sort of funny one till last. The second thing is I find I feel good if I feel like I've achieved something. So for me, especially at the moment, the only real thing that I've got to do is jump on a bike and ride while I'm trapped indoors. And being able to tick that box at the end of the day and realise that I've actually achieved what I set out to achieve is my motivation, because I know that if I can complete the session, I'm going to feel really good afterwards. So just knowing sort of the feeling of sort of euphoria after, battling out through a tough session is a big motivator. And thirdly, it would be the food reward at the end of the session. So I almost cycle so I can eat in some instances. And the rice cakes, the protein shake, the bit of chocolate here and there is always a welcome reward. So there's probably my top 3.
Definitely. Yeah, I hear you on that. The reward at the end, thinking about something like, okay, that can get you home sometimes too.
Yeah.
When you kind of like have hit the limit, or like you're like, I don't know if I can keep doing it, but if I do, then okay.
Yeah, got leftovers or something in the fridge.
Yeah. So like, with your training, do you map things out heavily, or do you use a bit more of like certain things you want to accomplish in periods of time? Or are you regimented or somewhere in between, or just wake up and whatever happens?
No, so it's quite structured. And generally what we do is we'll have, so when I'm outside, it would generally work where I'd have 2 days a week, which would be probably 6+ hours, and it's sort of a bit of a freedom style ride. So riding at an intensity of sort of 70-75% of my FTP. But aside from that, there's no real structure to it. It's just go out and explore and basically be on your bike.
Yep.
Around those 2 sessions for the remainder of the week, I then have probably one day a week where I have like a recovery day. 1 day a week, and on that recovery day I don't ride, I don't do anything, it's just proper recovery. I have another day which is just sort of a chill day, and that's normally before the weekend is riding. And then I'll throw in generally 2 days a week of intensity. So with those sessions, the way that they're generally prescribed is, all right, this is your block of intervals to complete today. But after that, I'm happy for you to ride for 2 hours at this heart rate or below this heart rate. And so he prescribes, like this is the work you have to get done. But after that, have a bit of free will if you want to go a bit longer. And then we'll have 1 day a week, which is a long one, which might be anywhere from, say, 7 to 12 hours. And that might not be every week. That might be every second week. But for me, they're like quite important because I feel like I'm on top of my game. I can still, I still have those long Ks in the legs.
Yep. And that's one of those things, like, do you, something like when you did, to start off like the KOM challenge 4 times, would you say like in training you did like close to half of that on a given day, or more than half, or less than half? Any idea?
So probably like a good one that relates quite nicely to that is like, say, the Everesting.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal in training before the Everesting is that I wanted to complete 3 Everestings, not consecutively back to back day after day, but I wanted to have 3 Everestings sort of under my belt, knowing that I could Everest different, grades of mountains or slopes. And for me, it's more of like a mental thing, just knowing I've done it before so I can do it again. I think trying to replicate it 100% is probably too much, but I think, say, like 30, 40%, 50% is probably a pretty good gauge.
Yep. And that's pretty similar, I'd say. We often break things down. Somebody doing a grand tour, if they're kind of focusing on a performance, like it's really hard to do 3 weeks of training at that level without the kind of support that they get during the race. And so having 1 full week like that, like a harder week, and then like a full replication week or something like that is kind of on the, like, okay, maybe half of it or a third of it to a half of it in some cases might be done beforehand. So, and I've seen that work pretty well in a lot of cases in longer, type events.
And for those guys, is it a mental thing as well? It's just knowing that you've done it once, so you can do it again.
Definitely, that's a part of it, and knowing like, okay, with fatigue, I can still do this even if I don't feel great. And an interesting thing, like, so we have a question here from Matt Green, like, how do you approach fueling for very long rides? So very long days, you're talking like 7 to 12 hours for you, once every 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. What does your like fueling on the bike look like?
So in the past, I've been pretty slack with it, in that I've sort of it's been pretty ad hoc. I'll eat, like people in Australia will joke, like I used to eat a lot of Turkish Delight because the glucose fructose breakdown was actually really good for exercise. But in the last probably year and a half, we've brought a lot more structure into it, and I generally aim to consume, especially on those longer rides, 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour if I can. And I find practicing that fueling strategy is as important as the riding itself, just because like to actually tolerate that amount of carbohydrate it's pretty tiresome on the gut. And I remember when I started doing it, I was having gut issues, and it was a matter of just slowly increasing the amount of food that I could consume. But we now have like a bit of a formula. So the other important thing is, and it sounds silly, is that I'm sure the guys on the Grand Tours have the same, but you just get sick of eating the same food day after day, hour after hour. And it's trying to come up with a strategy that allows you to sort of switch between the different foods. you don't want to have ulcers in your mouth because you've had too much sugar, or you don't want to have too much of one thing. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and I'd say trialing it is probably the most important aspect of getting that fueling strategy right.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few interesting things. So when we look from a physiological perspective, the lower the intensity, the better your GI system can handle a little bit higher intake. So many years ago, like I did the 24 hours in Moab solo, and I'm a sprinter. Like my nature is, explosive power, sprinting, and long endurance stuff is a mental thing that I want to do. I'm not physically meant to do it, physiologically meant to do it really well. So I had to figure out really what kind of energy expenditure. So fortunately, I work in a sports science lab and able to actually assess how much carbohydrate my body is using, even at a moderate intensity, is around 500 calories of carbohydrate per hour. And so I had to regulate my intensity in the ride such that I could take in that it's about 120 grams of carbohydrate per hour. And
you're 120. That's a lot, hey?
Yeah, for 24 hours straight. And so for me, flavor fatigue is a real thing. So when you say like eating the same thing over and over, so I had 3 different flavors of sports drink, because that's one of the ways, like with the fluid, because I also have a pretty high sweat rate. I'm 1 to 2 liters per hour sweat rate depending on the temperature. So that's a pretty high intake of fluid that I needed. So that was a fair amount of carbohydrates, but then mixing in salty things, some different textures, crunchy things, soft things, having that mix definitely is kind of an important thing. But it takes some trial and error in your training. And then once you find a few things that work in a race, a lot of times, like, okay, stick with that, but don't be afraid on occasion. Like, you're going to have whatever you have.
I think a good way to do it is to have one of those I use like a little handlebar bag, like a little feed bag. And I just put like as many different things in it as I can. So, sometimes you don't feel like eating gel, so you might have like a waffle or something, or it's just a matter of like trying to work out what you feel like so you can actually eat the calories.
Definitely. Yeah. I basically had a grab bag, and it was all those different things. I knew the total amount had the calories I needed to consume. And so it's just each time I'd come around, I'd need 2 of these things to put in my pocket for this next lap. And, whichever 2 I felt like having at that time, that's what it was. So it was a gummy or pretzels or something. So good follow-up question here from Drew Chaplin to follow up. What's your favorite post-ride meal? So Drew, his favorite is pizza and a cold beer. What's your recovery?
It's always something salty. I would go with something like, if it's a really hard ride, like a challenge, for example. One of the challenges, what would I eat after that? I would say, I know what I'd say. In Portugal, I had this craving for white bread with like thick butter. And I remember being at the little, it was like, those little sachets you get at restaurants. I was having like a little bit of ciabatta with a whole slab of butter and just going for it. And a cold beer always goes down well. An achievement sort of thing. Cheers to yourself.
Yeah. So you're an Aussie. Do you do the Vegemite as well? The bread, butter, and Vegemite. That's a pretty classic, more breakfast.
The odd Vegemite with avocado is a favorite, but I've run out of Vegemite. I need to put an order in on Amazon to get some.
Yep, definitely. That's good. For me, I think a burrito is one of my favorite post-ride, like a Coca-Cola, a glass. You like the good sugar, like, because in the US we have some, the other stuff, but out of the glass bottle, Coca-Cola and a burrito. And like my favorite thing in the summer, like doing a big ride, stopping at like Boulder Creek where the cold water is running down, just sitting in the water, like icing the legs down, eating the burrito, drinking the Coke, like all at the same time. It's like, that's
this is stuff. Torture sitting inside thinking about it.
It'll come again.
I hope.
We have a question from Natalie here. So what does your mental health practices and training off the bike look like? So do you work with therapists? Do you do things on your own? Are you in some mix of?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. And like, I don't have any like hard and fast training that I would complete on a weekly basis. I've got as well as like a coach, I also have a mate I use him as a bit of a mentor. Andy's his name, and he was a ex-SAS soldier. So in Australia we have the Secret Services. So he's been to Iraq and he's done some crazy things. But for me, like having someone like him that I look up to and can use as a bit of a sounding board is important. And it's just sort of, in the past I've spoken with psychologists when I've had sort of difficult times in my life. And for me, like the biggest thing is just getting it out in the open and having someone to actually talk to about it. And for me, it's my mate Andy, or it's my coach. So as far as training goes, I'd say I don't have any hard and fast training, but what I would say is that my struggles, like personal struggles with mental health in the past, if I look at a challenge now, I find like a challenge is nothing compared to a difficult time I've been through in the past, and I almost try and compare them. So, you know, whether it's your second Everest of 3, it's like, you know, this is hard, but that was way harder. So it's trying to put it into perspective.
Yeah. And having people that you can, you know, utilize in that support network is really important. That's definitely.
Yeah. For me, like my dad often comes on the challenges, and that is, he's not only like a good mate of mine, but he's like my voice of reason. So if things start going pear-shaped, or if I need to make a decision and I'm sort of not in the state to do it, he's that person for me.
Definitely. That's fantastic. You have, you know, again, that circle and those people around you is what can help you get through things, tough times, and you know, do great things too. It's always great to have there. All right.
Hey guys, I'm gonna jump in here because I want to ask Jack a question. So you're talking about, you know, things, you know, challenges that a lot of times it's about perspective, you know, and I think that's even beyond just the challenge, right? Like when you're looking at just life in general, your current situation. I know you've said to me, like, you know, in other conversations that, you know, it's kind of like perspective. Like this is like a very small amount of time and a very big picture, right?
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain that a little bit and sort of like kind of give viewers an understanding of what's happening in Girona and what your experience with this sort of like lockdown has been, and sort of how you've been managing that?
Yeah, sure. So like it's a bit of it's all about perspective. So for me, we've been locked indoors now for 6 weeks. And, you know, if you look at 6 weeks as, you know, if you just look at the fact that you've been locked inside for 6 weeks, it seems like a long time no matter how you look at it. And with another 2 weeks still to go in lockdown, it's sort of, you know, that's 8 weeks. It's 2 months that we've been locked inside. But what I do is I try and put it in perspective. So you think 8 weeks, what's that as a percentage of a year? You know, it's 2 months out of 12 months. It's, you know, it's not a huge percentage. But what if you look at it as part of like a 5-year plan, like 2 months out of 60 months in 5 years, it's starting to get smaller and smaller. And for me, that's like a really powerful way of dealing with something, whether it's, you know, lockdown, whether it's a difficult time on the bike, like you know, you're in a race and you've got 10K left and you're on the rivet. 10 kilometers is, you know, how long is that going to last? Like it's not a very long time. And it's almost like playing a bit of a trick on your mind, but it's not a trick, it's actually reality. But it's trying to sort of show your mind that, you know, it's actually what you've got to deal with is not actually that difficult. And I find it, for me, that's like gold standard mental health training. It's like just putting it into perspective.
And Neal, I'm sure you've seen this with athletes as well. It's like breaking down the challenge, whether it's the tour, you know, whether it's the workout, whether it be, it's like, is that something that you've seen a lot of great results from, both like mentally giving you confidence, you know, to achieve big things, but also just physically to like be able to meet the challenge, is to like break it down to like, you know, this one part, okay, this 10 kilometers, this, you know, 3 minutes or whatever, this week, you know, or whatever it may be.
Definitely. You have to chunk things out. So again, you know, having a plan is good, but then being able to adapt the plan based on the situation is really a super critical factor too. And so, in some cases we'll make that a little bit of make an adjustment, because it's like, okay, we wanted to do this, but how you're feeling, we're going to actually pull back and do less rather than try to go forward. And that's the I'd say where a lot of times people kind of make mistakes on occasion of, instead of pulling back and listening to when like they're just not able to complete something, taking the rest and then being able to go back at it. They try to keep pushing and then end up fading a little bit more. So thinking about, you can't always hit every single goal that you have planned out there for whatever reason, whether it's, some cases just weather, it's terrible weather, you can't go out and do that kind of thing.
Or COVID-19.
Or a massive pandemic all of a sudden has dropped in and these events aren't happening. Like the Olympics are happening next year, not this year. Like what? Like that's absolutely mental if you like try to, really think about it. But it's like, okay, it is what it is now. What are we going to do then in between? So we'll pull back a little bit, reassess, and then move forward where we can and take that process. What are the things, what can you improve while you're in a situation where you're riding outside? Okay, well, I'm going to figure out how to do some specific training inside. I'm going to work on maybe core strength and stability. I'm going to work on some mental skills. I'm going to learn, some new things outside of maybe even training that may help me. And that's the thing. It's just the opportunities and how to manage that.
Yeah. And Jack, I think that's interesting because you talk about kind of breaking it down, and I think that perspective is like big, but then it's also like small. And then it's also like, I wonder, do you kind of have to approach it the same way from a standpoint of not just like breaking it down, but like when you have a, quote unquote kind of failure? Because I think a lot of people, a lot of type A, athlete kind of people that are really driven can get kind of stuck sometimes in that, but then really successful athletes or really successful humans in general can like look at like kind of quote unquote defeat or failure as like that opportunity, right? To like identify something. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think like especially when you're setting out to do something like race the Tour de France or, to do something, go to the Olympics, like once, like to get knocked down from doing that is like, you've been training for that for a long time. And like, for example, like the goals that you had that are no longer happening because, COVID, it's like, what is the positive of it? There's always these negatives, like we didn't get to do it, like you failed. Yeah, but, like, for example, like I've personally found that if I spend a lot of time doing big kilometers on the bike, I don't have the time to concentrate on your sort of higher end power because it's this, this battle of, you're fatigued and then but at the moment it's like I'm not doing any long Ks. So the positive of that is that I've got time to now do the higher intensity stuff, which then raises the FTP, and I've got time to do the stretching, the things that I haven't done before. So while there's negatives, there's always positives as well. And I find like concentrate on the positives aside, apart, rather than concentrating on the negatives.
Yeah, and I think, someone just commented in, Matt Green just commented, and I'll pop this up on screen, and he just says, basically simplified everything we've been talking about. Take the focus off the things you can't control. So just control what you can control, and accepting sometimes the limitation, whether it be your own limitation or the limitations of kind of things that are out of your control.
Placed on you. Yep.
For sure.
Absolutely.
I've got kind of one other question I wanted to ask, Jack, is, and we've seen a lot of comments from people, supporting kind of what you're doing, really appreciating the mental health aspect of what you kind of bring, to the challenges that you take on and kind of your mission behind a lot of that. Can you talk about what is coming up, sort of real briefly, what you were planning in 2020 with regards to the tour, and then obviously kind of changing that a bit, and then now?
All right, so the main goal for the year was this concept that we sort of toyed with the name of the Amazing Chase, and it was a bit of a play on words with the Amazing Race. And essentially the Tour de France is a 3-week race, and it's considered, one of the toughest endurance events on Earth. And my goal was to give the tour a 10-day head start. So let the riders depart from the starting point. Let them ride for 10 days. And then my plan was to leave from the same starting point and essentially try and chase them to Paris. So I wanted to ride the Tour de France in half the time of the peloton in a bit of a cat and mouse. And we wanted to document this in the form of a film to show, if there's enough grit and determination behind a given cause, then you can achieve some really special things. And though the tour may still go ahead, but we've made the call that just given circumstances, that's going to have to go on the back burner for now. But the exciting stuff is, what's come up in lieu of that. And as Neal and I were talking about, this the ability to go and do something in your own backyard, I've been thinking here in Girona, we're surrounded by amazing scenery. We've got, the world-class mountains on our doorstep. What if I was to put together a route that would see me, undertake climbing all these climbs and do it all in one day? So if I picked the most epic climbs of Girona and the sort of surrounding Catalonian area, and I plotted them on a map on Komoot, and I went and did that on one day, how would that look? And how could we document that route and basically, unite people along that route to see how COVID's affected them? So it's like, how have I been able to use the bike to connect people who don't ride a bike and learn about how COVID's affected them? So it's essentially this bike adventure, but it's much more than just a bike adventure. So that's the immediate goal afterwards, and it's something I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there in your backyard. Neal, are you taking on any challenges? Are you trying? I mean, I know you have lead boat coming up, so you're still kind of focused on that. Do you see that as sort of your challenge in your backyard?
That's the biggest one for me. I still I'm trying to think of something else before that, to do. That's kind of a challenge. Like years ago, I was coaching athletes that were getting ready. They're in Grand Tours, at the Vuelta and at the Giro, and I was, in getting them ready for that, and then even just following the race. I'm like, these days with 6,000 meters of climbing, in the middle of a tour, I was trying to get a handle of okay, well, how much climbing is that on a given day? So I mapped out from home, all the climbs that I could, pretty quickly, just connect. And it ended up being 4,000 meters with just a pretty small radius. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go, ride that just to get a feeling for myself, what 4,000 meters was, not in the middle of a Grand Tour. And I rode those 4,000 meters. It took me, almost 7 hours, a little over 7 hours. And I did it solo by myself. I ran out of water one time and, had to ride for an hour with a sip of water on a hot climb. And I got to the finish of that with a totally newfound appreciation of the demand and the stress. And it just kind of reoriented, what is hard, what's difficult. Cause I had already done a 24-hour race before, but this was doing something totally unsupported. I literally decided on Wednesday I was going to do it on a Friday and just went out. So I was ill prepared. I was all those things, but I wanted to kind of be in that uncomfortable place and kind of do something that was both challenging, but also kind of enlightening in some way. And so right now I'm still stirring, what are these things, what do I want to do? I've seen a couple things out there that I'm questioning, what's going to be on my list, hopefully in, say June or July, that I can, kind of break through in a way, get out of the rut that you get used to, certain things. I've lived here in Boulder for 20 some years. And so I've ridden pretty much all the climbs, or a lot of the roads, but there's still places I haven't. So what can I do maybe to connect some places I haven't been, or connect some routes that, are harder to do maybe.
Yeah, I think I've taken some inspiration from Jack's Everesting, efforts. That I think I might take some of my Sufferfest fitness here, and I may do a virtual Everesting.
Sick.
Yeah, so I might have to invite you guys along for part of it, because I'll need all the encouragement I can get. I'm not sure how the recovery will be after that and just what it will do to me long term. So, there's some stuff to navigate there, but I think it'd be a fun little challenge, and I'm definitely taking some inspiration from guys like you, Jack, who are putting in the hard work. So, and I mean, you got to put this Sufferfest fitness to work somehow. Like,
exactly,
that's
one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, we all thought maybe this would be a certain amount of time, but it's getting a little longer, and so it is. That's just the reality of the situation. So adapt and control what you can control. As Matt Green said. So I on that note, Jack, we're gonna kind of let everybody know we are going to document that challenge that you're going to do. Wahoo is going to be working with you in partnership to create a film kind of about not just the challenge, but the feeling, and kind of document what the impact of this pandemic has been in that region, the Catalonia region, and a lot of cycling happens in the Catalonia region. If you're not familiar with that part of Spain, really encourage you to do a quick little Google search. I'm sure you've seen it, you just may or may not be aware. And then I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, we're trying to release that. Hopefully whenever you get out of lockdown, you can go ride your bike outside again. So we all have our fingers crossed for you, as well as in solidarity with the rest of the world that is in a much tighter situation than a lot of us here in the States are. So we're thinking of you guys, and part of why I'll do my potential virtual Everesting effort inside is a solidarity. Jack, is there any final words you want to say to people before we jump off?
No, I think the main thing is just to, we're talking about that perspective, but let's, put it into perspective, guys. Like, it sucks for those that can't ride outside, but, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And whether it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks isn't very long. So, do the right thing, stay indoors, and the sooner we all do that, the sooner we'll be back out there kicking goals.
I couldn't say it better, man. I appreciate that.
No worries.
Absolutely.
It's good to have someone, like yourself, who's putting things in perspective. Right now, I think, we're just hearing a lot of mixed messages, and it's really good to hear a good positive perspective on this. And I'm glad to know that you're putting it to work yourself, that it's not just words for you. So, all right, Jack, I appreciate it.
Well, guys,
we'll catch up with you real soon.
Sounds good. Nice to chat. See you, Neal. See you, Matt.
Thanks, Jack.
Neal, another great episode.
Yeah,
definitely. Thanks for joining again. Coach Susie just chatted in here that maybe I should skip the virtual Everesting and go for a Sufferfest knighthood. That actually could be something here. I mean, that's essentially what 10 back-to-back workouts. Yep. And is it done within a period of time?
Yeah, you can't have more than 10 minutes between each. So, boom, boom, boom. It goes.
So anybody out there looking for a challenge while you're kind of in this, obviously consider your health, as Neal can attest why these all-in plans have been created, is to kind of keep a lot of the work you're doing kind of down and not put too much tax on the immune system. But if you're looking for a little something to kind of challenge yourself, Neal, would you say doing something like the knighthood would be a good goal for people right now?
I would say, a goal that you could be working towards. In most cases, unless you're in an area that has absolutely no hotspots and whatnot, and you have less limitations, that it's probably better to wait until we're through the worst of this.
Basically, it's going to tax your system pretty hard.
Yeah, we do know, from just a straight up, immune response, a long, hard session like that, even if you reduce the intensity, it's still going to be significant. I think that it's right on that edge, But if you live in a cabin out in the woods and you haven't seen anyone for a month and a half or so, might not be a bad idea, I guess.
Well, these are definitely some things to consider. I know this stuff that's floating through my head as well. So, well, any parting words before we jump off and catch up next week?
Yeah, I think, it just comes back to, even though, in most cases people are having, several more weeks of things in lockdown, just take it, one day at a time, keep moving forward. That's always the key.
Well, I appreciate that. And on that note, we'll catch you next week. Thanks, Neal.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, guys, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for joining again. Great conversation with Jack. I mean, he's such an inspiration, not just in his efforts, but his approach to why he does what he does, and his approach to his mental health. I think we can all take a lesson from a lot of that. So thanks again for joining. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the Wahoo YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe now. Click that bell so you're notified when we go live. Next week, we have Pete Stetna joining us on Monday for a workout with Neal. And so that'll be a lot of fun. He's part of our Frontiers gravel campaign. So if you haven't caught that episode, go ahead and watch that episode over on our YouTube channel. Queue up your questions ahead of time because he'll be back for Friday's Q&A next week as well. And then we have a little bit something special next week on Wednesday. So Coach Susie is going to actually be, instead of doing a strength or yoga session, she's actually going to be doing the new test on the Sufferfest half Monty. I won't get into too much of that now because Neal's going to go into in depth on that next Wednesday. But tune in if you're interested in understanding like what fitness testing is, how to go about doing it, and sort of the results and like what does it mean for your goals and for fitness in general. So definitely tune in on Wednesday for that. We go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And kind of the final thing I'll say, guys, is if you're not currently a Sufferfest subscriber, go ahead and click that link down in the description below. Use the code and get yourself a solid month and a half of training and kind of set some new goals during this time. And in closing, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks for joining again. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. Take care.